Sometimes, kindness waits in the quietest corners. Jack Sullivan murmured to himself as he trudged along the frost-lined streets of Cedar Hollow. The glow from the street lamps reflecting off puddles that mirrored the gray sky above. His German shepherd, Blaze, padded silently beside him, fur gleaming silver and cream under the dim light, ears swiveling at every subtle sound. Amber eyes scanning the shadows as if they held the answers to questions no one had asked. The cold air bit at Jack's cheeks, but he barely noticed, absorbed by the rhythmic crunch of his boots on the ice-slick pavement and the faint hum of the town settling into night. Ahead, Eleanor Hayes, wrapped in a worn navy shawl, struggled with an overturned cart of groceries, its contents threatening to spill into the street. And without hesitation, Jack stepped forward, lifting the heavier side with careful precision, muscles tensed and released in practiced motion. His heart quietly steady despite the sudden adrenaline. Blaze barked softly, alerting to something beneath the wheel's shadow, pawing at the ground as though sensing a story hidden in the cobblestones, a secret waiting for discovery. Eleanor exhaled, her breath fogging in the frigid air, eyes wide with relief, and Jack offered a reassuring nod, noticing for the first time the faint flicker of something curious in her gaze, a glint of a ring, a brass key, or perhaps a memory she was holding close. The rain had slowed to a drizzle, tapping gently against the cart, the smell of wet earth and pine mingling with the distant scent of smoke from a chimney, creating an atmosphere that felt alive, almost sentient, as if the world itself was aware of the moment unfolding. Blaze sniffed the perimeter, low growl vibrating in his chest, a warning and an invitation all at once, leading Jack to glance down at a loose floorboard near the curb, its edge catching the faint glow of a lamplight, and he paused, hand hovering above it, sensing the pulse of history, the weight of untold stories. Eleanor's hand lingered on his arm, fleeting and gentle, as she murmured a quiet thank you, voice soft and melodic, carrying over the subtle hiss of water sliding into gutters, and Jack felt a warmth settle in his chest, the kind that had nothing to do with fire or shelter, but with the quiet acknowledgement of a moment's true connection. The wind shifted, carrying a whisper of leaves and the distant chime of a bell from the old bakery, and Jack, eyes narrowing slightly, followed the subtle cue, sensing the night had more to reveal, a gentle tug toward mystery hidden beneath the ordinary. For a heartbeat, the world seemed suspended, the ordinary street transformed into a stage, shadows deepened, textures heightened, the wet cobblestones glimmering like tiny mirrors reflecting not only the lamplight, but the anticipation of something extraordinary waiting just out of sight. Blaze nudged his hand, amber gaze locking with Jack's, and in that instant, Jack understood, without words, that helping Eleanor tonight was not just an act of compassion but the first step toward a revelation, a miracle quietly gathering beneath the cold, watching, waiting, ready to unfold. The early morning air in Cedar Hollow was crisp, carrying the scent of damp leaves and the faint aroma of baking bread from a nearby shop, and Jack Sullivan adjusted the collar of his coat as Blaze padded ahead, ears high, nose twitching at the delicate rhythms of the town waking beneath a soft, gray light. The streets were slick with melted frost, each step sending a small splash from puddles reflecting the pale sunrise, and Jack felt the familiar weight of his backpack settle against his shoulders, a quiet reminder of journeys past and the discipline etched into him from years of service. As they approached the narrow alley behind Eleanor Hayes's home, Blaze stopped abruptly, tail stiff, eyes amber and focused, signaling with a soft growl that something subtle yet important had shifted in the air, and Jack slowed, letting the dog lead. Feeling the pulse of anticipation thrumming beneath the cobblestones and in the steady rhythm of his own heartbeat, Eleanor appeared at her back door moments later, wrapped in a shawl that smelled faintly of cedar and lavender, her hands cradling a small, wrapped parcel, and she gave Jack a look of quiet trust that spoke volumes in the muted light, a story held in a single glance. Jack stepped closer, careful and deliberate, his broad hand steady as he took the parcel, the paper rough beneath his fingers, the weight promising more than mere objects, a hint of mystery and a touch of destiny. Blaze circled, sniffing the edges of the parcel, then nudged it with his nose as if affirming the importance of what was about to unfold. And Jack could not help but smile faintly at the intuitive intelligence of his companion. The way the dog seemed to understand possibilities beyond human sight. Together, they walked toward the quiet bench in the small courtyard, the town around them still hushed, the soft chirping of early birds threading through the air, and Jack unwrapped the package with deliberate care, fingers brushing the textured paper, revealing a delicate key and a folded note, the handwriting elegant and precise, hinting at stories and spaces hidden for years. Eleanor watched silently, the sunlight catching the silver strands in her hair, casting a soft glow around her profile, and Jack read the note aloud in a voice calm yet resonant. The words telling of a small cottage tucked away behind the hills, untouched for decades, waiting for someone to care for it again, a gesture of gratitude and trust that felt like a quiet miracle in itself. Blaze pawed gently at Jack's side, eyes bright, as if urging him to step forward and claim the moment, the air around them vibrating with potential and gentle suspense. The ordinary morning transformed into a bridge between past and future, kindness and reward. Jack looked up from the note, meeting Eleanor's gaze once more, and in that shared silence there was understanding, a confirmation that what they had done the night before had rippled outward in ways neither could fully predict, and that the morning's light carried not only warmth and clarity, but the promise of new beginnings shaped by quiet courage and compassionate hearts. Jack Sullivan and Blaze followed the narrow, winding path up the gentle slope behind Cedar Hollow, the morning sun filtering through bare branches, casting a mosaic of light and shadow across the frost-speckled ground, the air crisp with the scent of pine and wet earth. The small cottage Eleanor had described emerged gradually, weathered and tucked into the hillside, its stone walls mottled with moss and age, a roof of faded cedar shingles stretching low over the front porch, windows narrow and deep, hinting at stories kept within for decades. Blaze paused, nose twitching at the threshold, ears alert, tail swaying gently, signaling Jack to proceed with care. And Jack felt the quiet thrill of discovery, the kind that lingers in the chest when the world feels alive and expectant. The door creaked softly as he pushed it open, revealing a hallway lined with the scent of aged wood and subtle hints of lavender, a place untouched but not abandoned, each floorboard carrying a faint echo of laughter and life from years past. Sunlight spilled in through a small window, dust motes drifting lazily in the golden glow, and Jack took a slow breath, letting the silence settle over him, comforting and reverent, the kind of stillness that invites reflection and attention to detail. Eleanor's note had spoken of careful stewardship, of respect and presence, and as he stepped forward, Jack ran his gloved fingers along the rough texture of the walls, feeling the pulse of the house, the memory embedded in its structure, and Blaze padded alongside, occasionally stopping to sniff a corner or press a paw against the floor, eyes bright and attentive as if interpreting the whispers of the place. In the main room, a hearth, cold and untouched, he noticed small shelves carved into the stone, remnants of everyday life, cups and jars, and a scattering of dried herbs, each item telling a fragment of the story, patiently waiting for someone to notice and honor it. Jack set down his pack and retrieved a small toolkit, moving with quiet precision to examine the hearth, straighten loose planks, and ensure stability, each motion deliberate, echoing the habits formed from years of attention and care, the same focus that had guided him in service and in life. Blaze lay nearby, occasionally lifting his head to catch scents carried by drafts, then returning to a relaxed vigilance, the companion perfectly attuned to the rhythm of exploration and discovery. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint rustle of leaves and distant birdsong, the town below barely stirring, giving the hillside a suspended, almost sacred quality, as if this cottage existed in a bubble between past and present, ordinary and extraordinary. Jack paused in the doorway of what must have been the kitchen, noticing a small, worn table and chairs, each surface etched with subtle marks of time, and felt the quiet weight of history, the presence of Eleanor's care and intent interwoven with the structure itself. He placed a hand on the stone countertop, feeling its cool solidity, and allowed himself a moment of reflection, understanding that the act of being here, of preparing this space was itself part of the reward, a meditation on kindness, patience, and the unseen ways generosity returns to those who act with conscience and heart. Blaze stretched, amber eyes locking with Jack's, a silent affirmation of trust and shared purpose, and, in the calm, sunlit space, the veteran felt the first whisper of a miracle, subtle, patient, but undeniable, a reminder that some gifts arrive not in spectacle, but in the quiet unfolding of care and attention, ready to transform ordinary mornings into moments of grace. Jack Sullivan stepped onto the small back porch of the cottage, the wooden boards creaking softly beneath his boots, the air carrying the crisp scent of morning frost mixed with the faint aroma of pine from the surrounding woods, and Blaze paused at his side, tail low but alert, amber eyes scanning the edges of the forest as though anticipating the unfolding of a story older than the town itself. The sunlight had grown warmer, a soft golden hue spilling across the stone walls and illuminating the intricate patterns of moss clinging to the sides of the building, the subtle shadows revealing the textures of weathered wood and worn stone that had endured decades of wind, rain, and sun. Jack set down the parcel from Eleanor Hayes, unfolding the note once more to read the directions carefully, tracing his finger along the lines of handwriting that carried both instruction and the quiet weight of trust, and he felt the presence of the woman through each stroke, a whisper of her kindness lingering in the air. Blaze let out a soft, measured growl, pawing at a corner of the porch where the floorboards were slightly uneven, as if sensing a secret hidden just beneath, and Jack crouched, running his hand along the gap, feeling the faint vibration of age and patience embedded in the structure, the anticipation of discovery settling into his chest with a calm intensity. He rose slowly, scanning the cottage with deliberate care, noticing a small garden plot to the side where early shoots of herbs had begun to poke through the soil, the subtle fragrance of thyme and rosemary carried on the breeze, mingling with the sounds of rustling leaves and distant birdsong, and he felt the gentle pulse of life within the quiet stillness, a living testament to the care that had nurtured it. Inside the cottage, sunlight streamed through narrow windows, glinting off the dust motes dancing in the air, highlighting the textures of walls, counters, and shelves, each surface telling stories of previous hands and the intention of Eleanor's gift, and Jack moved with methodical attention, brushing away small remnants of time, adjusting a chair, testing the stability of a cabinet, each motion a silent meditation on respect and stewardship. Blaze explored the rooms with measured curiosity, stopping to sniff a corner here, pressing a paw gently on a plank there, amber eyes bright and focused, communicating without words the understanding of shared purpose and quiet anticipation that had guided him for years. Jack placed his hand on the cold stone of the fireplace, feeling the lingering warmth of memories, the imprint of countless moments preserved in the grain of the hearth, and he reflected on the evening prior, the unassuming act of helping Eleanor, the weight of kindness returned in unexpected form, a reminder that the world often rewards those who move with patience, compassion, and attentiveness. The wind shifted again outside, carrying the faint murmur of the town below and the rustle of trees lining the hillside, and in that moment, Jack and Blaze shared a silent understanding, the presence of quiet wonder, a subtle yet profound recognition that the morning, the cottage, and the gift from Eleanor represented more than shelter, more than property, but a living bridge between human hearts, anchored by trust, care, and the gentle persistence of goodness unfolding in time. The light continued to change, brushing the corners of the rooms, highlighting details previously unnoticed, and Jack inhaled deeply, letting the calm and clarity settle within, knowing that this space, nurtured and preserved, would carry forward the promise of hope, the reflection of generosity, and the quiet affirmation that even small acts of kindness can ripple outward to create moments of unexpected grace and meaning, all under the attentive gaze of Blaze, whose presence quietly affirmed the unfolding of a subtle, beautiful miracle. Jack Sullivan moved deeper into the cottage, each step measured and deliberate, the worn wooden floorboards creaking softly underfoot as Blaze followed closely, ears twitching at the faintest shifts in the air and amber eyes scanning every shadow, as if they could uncover the hidden layers of history woven into the walls. Sunlight had climbed higher, spilling across the uneven plaster and illuminating subtle cracks, each one a record of time. The quiet breathing of the house itself almost palpable, carrying with it the echoes of past hands that had crafted, mended, and cared for the space over decades. Jack paused in what must have been the living room, noticing a small bookshelf with leather-bound volumes and faded photographs tucked carefully between the pages. The smell of aged paper mingling with the faint scent of pine and the lingering aroma of Eleanor Hayes's lavender sachets. And he felt a gentle pulse of connection, a resonance between the kindness he had shown and the care he was now entrusted to preserve. Blaze wandered slowly, sniffing at the base of a corner chair, pressing his paw gently, as if guiding Jack's attention to details overlooked, a subtle communication of intuition and shared purpose. And Jack knelt, brushing the dust from the floor and noting a faint indentation in the wood that hinted at a hidden compartment, the kind of quiet secret that invited patience and reverence rather than haste. The morning light shifted, casting delicate patterns through the narrow windows, painting the room in golds and soft shadows that moved with the passage of time. And Jack breathed deeply, feeling the stillness settle around him, a calm that contrasted with the underlying anticipation that the cottage seemed to hum with, a gentle vibration that made the air feel alive and attentive. He explored a small kitchen area, running his hand along the worn countertop, noting the subtle imperfections in the stone that spoke to long use and careful maintenance. And Blaze paused by a wooden crate, nudging it gently, ears alert, as though reminding Jack that each object here carried a purpose and a story, a narrative waiting to be understood and honored. Jack straightened, surveying the main room once more, and allowed himself to imagine the hands that had once prepared meals here, the voices that had once filled the space with warmth and laughter, the care that Eleanor had poured into preserving this hidden refuge. And he felt a profound sense of responsibility, a quiet inspiration to match her trust with his own dedication and attentiveness. Outside, the wind rustled the trees along the hillside, a soft, melodic accompaniment to the stillness inside, and the faint chirping of early birds threaded through the air, enhancing the sensation that the cottage existed in a pocket of time where ordinary and extraordinary converged, a sanctuary shaped by history and human kindness. Jack moved to a small window, lifting the latch and drawing back the faded curtain. The view of the forest beyond framed in a way that made the space feel both intimate and expansive, and he felt the weight of potential, the possibility that this morning's quiet discoveries would ripple outward, fostering a sense of purpose and belonging that was as tangible as the sun-warmed stone beneath his fingers. Blaze settled near the hearth, amber eyes half-closed but attentive, a silent partner in vigilance and reflection, and Jack exhaled slowly, the rhythm of his breath matching the subtle pulse of the cottage, a meditation on generosity, patience, and the unfolding of unseen miracles, a gentle affirmation that the acts of care and trust that brought him here were already creating a space where hope and gratitude could thrive, ready to grow in quiet, profound ways. Jack Sullivan spent the afternoon methodically exploring the remaining corners of the cottage, each step deliberate, the wooden floorboards responding with gentle creaks beneath his boots. Blaze at his side, tail low but alert, amber eyes flicking toward the faint shadows cast by the sun as it shifted slowly across the walls. He opened a small closet tucked beneath the staircase, dust swirling lightly in the air, revealing a collection of carefully stacked linens and boxes that carried the scent of cedar and the faint trace of Eleanor Hayes's lavender sachets, each item speaking of years of care and attention, patiently preserved for someone to notice. Jack lifted one of the boxes, fingers brushing against a rough, worn surface, feeling the subtle weight of the past, the echoes of small daily acts embedded in the fabric, and he realized how much of life was captured in these ordinary, unnoticed details. The very texture of patience and devotion. Blaze pawed at the edge of the closet, nudging Jack gently toward a corner where a small, weathered chest rested, partially obscured by shadows, and Jack crouched, running his hand over the rough-hewn wood, noticing the faint warmth left by years of handling and the subtle groove of a lock long and used, a silent invitation to discovery. He lifted the lid slowly, sunlight catching on the brass fittings, revealing a stack of journals bound in leather, each one worn but intact, the pages faintly yellowed, the ink still legible, chronicling decades of careful thought, small triumphs, and the quiet dignity of a life lived with intention. Blaze sniffed each journal, nudging them with his nose as if sensing their importance, amber eyes conveying the same understanding Jack felt in his chest, that each story, each moment preserved, carried a lesson and a gift for the present. Jack took a seat near the hearth, letting the journals rest on his knees, flipping through the pages, reading lines that spoke of hope, patience, and small kindnesses offered and received, the cadence of Eleanor Hayes's life echoing in his mind, a rhythm that harmonized with the gentle crackle of the fire, the whisper of wind outside, and the steady, familiar presence of Blaze beside him. The sun continued its slow ascent, painting the room in shifting golds and soft shadows, and Jack allowed himself to imagine the countless mornings and evenings spent within these walls, each one layered with intention, care, and quiet perseverance, a testament to the enduring power of thoughtful living. He noted the small details, the careful alignment of shelves, the subtle arrangement of keepsakes, and felt a profound respect for the unseen labor and dedication that had created this sanctuary, a space where the ordinary became extraordinary through attentiveness and love. Blaze rested his head on Jack's knee, amber eyes half closed yet alert, a silent partner in observation and reflection, and Jack felt a sense of continuity, as if their shared presence honored the legacy of Eleanor's life, connecting past and present in a delicate, living thread. The wind outside whispered through the trees along the hillside, the faint rustle of leaves and distant bird calls blending with the soft warmth of the hearth, creating a rhythm of life and remembrance, a melody of human kindness preserved and returned in subtle, meaningful ways. Jack exhaled slowly, letting the sensation of quiet accomplishment and reverence settle through him, the cottage now feeling alive, not simply as a space to inhabit, but as a vessel for memory, care, and the unfolding of unseen miracles, each corner and crevice holding the promise of discovery, gratitude, and the quiet satisfaction of stewardship performed with attention, heart, and purpose, all under the watchful gaze of Blaze, whose presence affirmed the deep, gentle magic of the moment. Jack Sullivan stepped outside into the crisp afternoon, the sunlight falling softly across the hillside, illuminating the cottage walls and casting long shadows over the frost-speckled grass, and Blaze walked ahead with careful steps, nose low, sniffing the earth as if tracing a trail left by time itself, ears flicking at the subtle sounds of distant birds and rustling leaves. The world beyond the porch was quiet, the town below barely stirring, and Jack felt the serenity of the moment settle into his chest, a gentle weight of calm that contrasted with the anticipation that had grown in him since discovering Eleanor Hayes's gift. He walked slowly toward a small stone path winding into a garden tucked beside the cottage, noticing early shoots of lavender and thyme, the delicate fragrance rising and mingling with the crisp air, and he paused, hands brushing against the rough edges of a low stone wall, feeling the history etched into every crevice and the subtle pulse of care that had maintained this space for decades. Blaze circled around him, alert yet calm, tail swishing lightly, nudging Jack gently toward a weathered wooden bench, where he set down the journals and letters from the chest, spreading them carefully, each piece telling its own story. The ink still vibrant, the paper worn, but sturdy, a testament to Eleanor's careful preservation and thoughtfulness. Jack flipped through the pages, reading passages that spoke of patience, quiet joy, and the small acts of kindness that had shaped lives long before his arrival. And he felt the connection deepen, the cottage and its treasures becoming not just a space of inheritance, but a sanctuary of understanding and continuity. The wind shifted, carrying the scent of pine and the faint earthy smell of damp soil, and he looked up, to see the sunlight catching Blaze's fur, the golden tones highlighting the strength and intelligence of his companion, a living link between past acts of care and present stewardship. He noticed a small drawer tucked beneath the bench, slightly ajar, and upon opening it found a delicate key and a folded note, the handwriting elegant, precise, and imbued with gentle warmth. inviting him to explore further. To uncover another layer of the space's history and purpose, Jack held the key in his hand, feeling the smoothness of the metal and the subtle engraving that spoke of intention and legacy, and he understood that this object was more than a simple token. It was a bridge to new possibilities, a continuation of the trust Eleanor had placed in him through her gift. Blaze sat quietly at his side, amber eyes following every motion, as if acknowledging the weight of discovery and participating in the silent dialogue between human, dog, and environment. Jack took a deep breath, letting the calm settle fully, the quiet afternoon light illuminating the dust motes floating lazily in the air, and he felt a profound sense of belonging, a connection to history and a responsibility to care for what had been entrusted to him. Each moment reinforcing the power of kindness returned, the subtle unfolding of miracles, and the assurance that in the ordinary rhythms of attention and presence, extraordinary gifts quietly awaited those who approached with patience, respect, and an open heart. Jack Sullivan held the small key in his hand, feeling the smooth edges against his palm, and a quiet excitement built in his chest as Blaze nudged him forward, tail low and ears high, signaling the beginning of a new discovery that seemed to ripple through the cottage with anticipation. He walked toward a modest wooden cabinet tucked beneath the far window, light spilling across its surface, illuminating subtle scratches and the soft sheen of varnish worn smooth by years of careful use. And as he inserted the key into the lock, the mechanism clicked softly, a delicate confirmation that this moment had been waiting, patiently preserved by intention and care. Opening the cabinet revealed a hidden compartment lined with velvet, and within it lay a collection of objects that carried a quiet significance. A small, intricately carved box, a set of faded letters bound with ribbon, and a delicate silver locket that reflected the soft glow of the sun filtering through the window, each item suggesting stories of gratitude, connection, and trust passed down through Eleanor Hayes's careful stewardship. Blaze circled the cabinet, sniffing attentively, pawing gently at the edges as if understanding the weight of the past, and Jack carefully lifted the letters, noticing the meticulous handwriting and the subtle scent of aged paper and lavender, reading aloud phrases that spoke of hope, persistence, and the quiet ripple of kindness across time. The afternoon sun moved slowly across the sky, casting golden light across the floorboards and walls, highlighting textures and details that had been overlooked, and Jack felt the space breathe around him, alive with memories and the unspoken intentions of those who had cared for it before him. Each object he touched seemed to whisper encouragement, a reminder that the acts of generosity and attention he had witnessed the night before were part of a larger current of care that had quietly flowed through the cottage for decades. He placed the locket gently on the windowsill, catching the sunlight, and felt a profound sense of connection, as if the house itself was acknowledging his presence and the respect with which he approached its secrets. Blaze lay near his feet, eyes bright and alert, tail flicking softly in quiet approval, a living testament to the intuitive understanding that guided them both through the unfolding layers of discovery. Jack explored further, gently opening drawers, straightening shelves, and noticing the subtle patterns in the wood and stone that reflected decades of thoughtful design, each detail reinforcing the sense that this was more than a physical space. It was a vessel of trust, a bridge between human hearts, and a quiet reminder that kindness, once given, often returned in ways both subtle and profound. Outside, the breeze carried the faint fragrance of pine and earth, rustling the branches along the hillside, and Jack could hear the distant murmur of birds. The cottage cocooned in a bubble of calm and gentle anticipation, a sanctuary shaped by intention, care, and the quiet unfolding of miracles. As he stepped back to survey the room, the sunlight shifting and reflecting off the polished surfaces, he felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude, not only for the objects he had discovered, but for the trust and generosity that had brought him here, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness could ripple outward to create moments of profound beauty and meaning, all under the watchful, loyal presence of Blaze, whose amber eyes seemed to affirm that they were exactly where they were meant to be, participating in a living miracle that quietly unfolded with each passing moment. as the sun began its slow descent behind the hills surrounding Cedar Hollow, casting long, soft shadows across the frost-speckled garden and the worn stone walls of the cottage. Jack Sullivan paused at the edge of the porch, feeling the gentle chill of evening air on his cheeks, while Blaze sat alert at his side, ears twitching at the subtle sounds of rustling leaves and distant bird calls, amber eyes scanning the horizon with an intensity that seemed to anchor the moment in quiet anticipation. Jack turned back to the interior of the cottage, the golden lights streaming through the narrow windows illuminating the dust motes floating lazily in the air, highlighting the textures of worn wood and stone, the careful arrangement of objects, and the subtle signs of years of thoughtful care, and he felt a deep resonance with the space, as if the house itself acknowledged his presence and trust, responding to the kindness and attention he had brought into it. Moving slowly through the main room, he ran his hands along the edges of tables and shelves, feeling the faint warmth left by decades of use, noticing the delicate lines and imperfections that told stories of daily life and quiet perseverance. Each surface a reflection of the care Eleanor Hayes had invested in preserving the cottage, a silent testament to patience and devotion. Blaze wandered through the rooms, sniffing carefully, occasionally nudging a book or object as if encouraging Jack to notice the significance of every detail, and Jack smiled faintly, understanding that the dog's instincts were guiding them both through layers of history and meaning, a shared rhythm of exploration and respect. Outside, the breeze carried the subtle scent of pine and damp earth, and the distant murmur of the town below seemed to fade into silence, leaving the cottage suspended in a golden glow, the atmosphere imbued with calm and possibility. And Jack felt the extraordinary weight of ordinary moments, the way small gestures and attention could transform a space into a vessel of memory and hope. He returned to the journals and letters, now spread across the table, reading passages that spoke of gratitude, quiet resilience, and the gentle persistence of kindness, and with each line, he felt the subtle connection between past and present, the invisible threads of care linking Eleanor's intentions with his own presence, forming a living chain of human generosity and trust. Blaze lay at his feet, head resting on paws, amber eyes half-closed yet watchful, a living reminder of loyalty and shared understanding, and Jack took a deep breath, letting the calm and richness of the moment fill him fully. The cottage now more than walls and roof, but a sanctuary of lessons, memories, and subtle miracles. He walked to the window, looking out over the hillside bathed in late afternoon light, noticing the delicate sway of tree branches and the shimmer of frost on distant rooftops, and he felt a sense of continuity, the quiet assurance that the care he offered to this space and its history would ripple outward, honoring the intentions of Eleanor Hayes and amplifying the effect of her generosity. The wind shifted gently, carrying the faint scent of herbs from the garden and the soft rustle of leaves, and Jack exhaled slowly, allowing the sensation of serenity, connection, and purpose to settle through him, knowing that each careful motion, each act of attentiveness, and each moment of quiet reflection had contributed to the unfolding of a gentle, enduring miracle, one that existed not in grand gestures but in the persistent, delicate flow of kindness, memory, and the attentive presence of both man and loyal companion, Blaze, whose steady amber gaze affirmed that this space, this time, and this unfolding was exactly as it should be, a quiet testament to the way goodness returns to those who offer it without expectation. Jack Sullivan stepped out onto the small porch as the late afternoon sun dipped lower, casting a warm amber glow over the frost-speckled grass and the stone walls of the cottage, and Blaze padded ahead, ears flicking at the soft rustle of leaves and the distant calls of birds returning to their nests, tail swaying with a quiet rhythm that mirrored the calm pulse of the moment. Jack adjusted his coat against the chill, feeling the crisp air fill his lungs and the gentle weight of the day settle into a steady, reflective quiet, and he looked out across the hillside, where the muted colors of winter trees blended with the faint glimmer of sunlight catching on patches of frost and the shadows lengthening across the garden. He walked slowly toward a small wooden gate at the edge of the property, hands brushing against the textured surface of the fence, rough yet steady beneath his fingers. Feeling the enduring care of the space and the subtle imprint of Eleanor Hayes's stewardship embedded in each board and post, Blaze paused, nose low, sniffing the damp earth, tail flicking slightly, and Jack crouched beside him, noticing a small trail of pine needles and fallen leaves that led to a hidden corner of the garden where early shoots of lavender and rosemary reached toward the sunlight, delicate and persistent. A quiet testament to resilience and attentive care, he straightened and walked along the path, boots crunching gently on the frost-hardened ground, observing the way the shadows shifted across the garden walls, the way the light caught on the edges of stone planters and the subtle curve of a low wooden bench, and he felt the interplay of history and present attention converge. The ordinary morning transformed into an extraordinary experience through observation and reflection. Blaze moved beside him, occasionally pausing to press a paw against the earth or sniff at a stone, amber eyes bright and alert, and Jack followed his companion's lead, sensing the intuitive awareness guiding them toward small, hidden details that spoke of generations of quiet care, the accumulated energy of kindness and attention residing in the space itself. He paused at a small wooden shed tucked behind a cluster of evergreens, its door slightly ajar, sunlight glinting off the aged metal latch. And with careful hands he pushed it open, revealing shelves lined with jars, dried herbs, and small tools, the scent of cedar and lavender mingling with the crisp air, the subtle vibrations of history emanating from every surface. Jack moved through the shed with measured care, adjusting items, brushing away a light layer of dust, each motion deliberate and thoughtful, the act of tending not merely maintenance, but in homage to the generosity and foresight that had created this sanctuary. Outside, the wind whispered gently through the trees, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth, the soft rustle harmonizing with the distant murmur of water from the town below, creating a sense of connection between the cottage, the hillside, and the broader world beyond. Jack stepped back, surveying the cottage and garden in the shifting light, feeling the weight of stewardship, the quiet acknowledgement of the legacy entrusted to him, and he exhaled slowly, the calm and richness of the moment settling through him, each breath carrying the subtle affirmation that kindness, care, and attention, when offered without expectation, return in ways both visible and profound. As Blaze lay nearby, amber eyes glowing in the sunlight, a silent partner in witnessing the gentle, enduring unfolding of a miracle, Jack Sullivan stepped into the small attic space at the far end of the cottage, sunlight filtering through a round window, illuminating dust motes that floated lazily in the warm glow, and Blaze padded beside him, amber eyes alert and ears high, sniffing at the faint traces of age and care that lingered in every corner. The room smelled faintly of cedar and aged paper, with wooden beams overhead carved by time and experience, and Jack ran his fingers along a low shelf where stacks of folded linens and small wooden boxes rested, feeling the texture of each item and the quiet weight of decades preserved with intention. He knelt beside a small chest tucked into the corner, the wood smooth from years of handling, brass fittings glinting softly in the sunlight, and carefully lifted the lid to reveal a delicate set of letters tied with ribbon, each envelope bearing careful script and the scent of lavender. A silent testament to thoughtfulness and foresight, Blaze nudged the chest gently, with his nose, tail flicking, alert to the significance of the discovery, and Jack felt the same surge of anticipation and reverence, understanding that these letters were more than words. They were fragments of a life lived with care, waiting to connect with him in this quiet, suspended moment. He opened the first envelope and read slowly, the words unfolding tales of gratitude, hope, and the small, persistent acts of kindness that Eleanor Hayes had nurtured and recorded over years, and with each line, Jack sensed the invisible thread linking past and present, weaving a tapestry of human generosity and trust. The sunlight shifted, glancing off a small silver locket nestled among the letters, and Jack lifted it carefully, feeling the smooth, cool metal in his palm and imagining the hands that had crafted it, the quiet thought that had led to its creation, a tangible echo of intention and care. Blaze lay near his feet, head resting lightly on the floor, yet eyes bright and attentive, a constant presence that mirrored Jack's reverence and connection to the space, their shared silence amplifying the depth of awareness in the room. Jack moved to the round window, placing the locket beside the glass, watching the light play across its surface, shimmering softly, and he felt the house itself breathe around him, a living witness to the unfolding of trust, generosity, and the gentle unfolding of miracles. Outside, the hillside glowed in the golden afternoon light. The faint rustle of pine needles and the distant hum of water from the town below blending into a harmonious soundtrack for reflection and gratitude, reinforcing the sense of continuity and purpose. Jack sat back on a low wooden stool, letting the letters and objects rest before him, absorbing the quiet rhythms of life embedded in the cottage, the scent of lavender and cedar mingling with the soft warmth of the sun. And he realized that being entrusted with this space was itself a profound act of connection, a gentle reminder that patience, attentiveness, and kindness return in ways both tangible and subtle, forming a living bridge across time. Blaze lifted his head briefly, amber eyes locking with Jack's, and the bond between man and dog, space and history, present and past, solidified in the silent acknowledgement of shared understanding. And Jack knew that the acts of care and attention offered here would ripple outward, creating a sanctuary where gratitude, trust, and the quiet miracles of human generosity could continue to grow, echoing softly in every beam, floorboard, and sunlit corner of the cottage. Jack Sullivan stood at the edge of the cottage porch as the late afternoon sunlight softened into a warm, golden hue, the hillside bathed in delicate light, and shadows stretching long across the frost-speckled ground, and Blaze sat alert at his side, ears high, tail moving with a subtle rhythm, amber eyes fixed on the distant trees swaying gently in the breeze. Jack inhaled deeply, taking in the scent of pine and damp earth mixed with the faint aroma of lavender from the garden, feeling the quiet pulse of the space around him, a resonance of the care and history embedded in the cottage and the trust that Eleanor Hayes had quietly placed in his hands. He moved slowly back inside, footsteps soft on the worn wooden floorboards, sunlight filtering through the narrow windows, illuminating dust motes dancing in lazy arcs. And the warmth of the late afternoon filled the room with a golden glow that softened the edges of every surface, highlighting the textures of stone, wood, and fabric. Preserved over decades, Blaze circled the room, pausing at corners and sniffing lightly, tail flicking gently, and Jack followed his companion's lead, moving deliberately to adjust a small stack of journals on the shelf, brushing away a fine layer of dust, each book and letter carrying the invisible weight of memories, care, and quiet attention, the gentle accumulation of a life lived thoughtfully. He lifted a delicate letter tied with ribbon, feeling the smooth paper and reading slowly, absorbing the careful script and the subtle scent of lavender embedded in its fibers, words that spoke of hope, patience, and the enduring power of kindness. And as he read, the room seemed to hum softly around him, the rhythm of history and present attention interweaving into a quiet symphony of trust and gratitude. The sun continued its descent, the light shifting and creating soft patterns across the walls. And Jack paused by the round window, resting his hand on the sill, feeling the cool wood beneath his fingers and the gentle warmth of the sunlight brushing his face, a tactile reminder of the connection between the present moment and the legacy of care that had brought him here. Outside, the trees whispered softly, branches swaying in harmony with the distant murmur of the town below, a subtle soundtrack to the unfolding serenity, and Jack felt the depth of presence in the space. A calm awareness of the invisible threads linking past and present, human and nature, man and loyal companion. Blaze lay at his feet, amber eyes gleaming in the soft light, occasionally lifting his head to observe the movement of sunlight across the floorboards, and Jack reflected on the quiet miracle of trust, the way attention and kindness returned in forms both tangible and subtle, each small discovery reinforcing the understanding that care and generosity ripple outward in ways unseen but profoundly felt. He moved to the hearth, brushing lightly against the stone, noting the traces of past hands, and allowed himself to pause, exhaling slowly, the weight of gratitude and responsibility settling into his chest. a serene acknowledgement of the gift entrusted to him and the enduring resonance of Eleanor Hayes's intention. In the stillness of the attic and the warmth of the sunlit main room, Jack felt the rhythm of life and kindness flowing quietly through the space, every object, floorboard, and sunbeam a testament to the patient unfolding of miracles, the gentle assurance that the acts of care and attention given without expectation return in ways both profound and subtle, and that his presence here, alongside Blaze, affirmed and continued this living legacy of trust, generosity, and quiet, enduring grace. As the evening sun dipped below the horizon, casting the cottage and surrounding hillside in a gentle amber glow, Jack Sullivan stood on the porch, letting the calm settle into his bones, Blaze sitting quietly at his side, ears twitching at the subtle sounds of the forest and the faint hum of life from the town below. The air was crisp, carrying the mingled scent of pine, damp earth, and the lingering aroma of lavender from the small garden, a tapestry of memories and presence that seemed to wrap the cottage in a soft embrace. And Jack inhaled deeply, feeling the weight and warmth of quiet purpose flowing through him. He turned slowly, eyes tracing the contours of the stone walls, the worn wood of the porch, the delicate shadows cast by the fading light, and felt a profound sense of connection to everything around him, a resonance of trust, patience, and care that had guided him here, echoing in every corner, crevice, and beam. Blaze lifted his head, amber eyes gleaming, tail flicking with gentle rhythm, and Jack watched the dog, noting the loyalty, intuition, and presence that had accompanied him through countless journeys, a companion who mirrored his attentiveness and reverence for the quiet, unfolding miracle of the moment. Jack walked back inside, sunlight catching the dust motes in the air, each particle floating like a small memory, each surface telling its own story of Eleanor Hayes's thoughtful stewardship and the way care could ripple through time and space, creating connections that were both tangible and invisible. He moved through the main room, adjusting a small vase, brushing lightly against a shelf, noticing the subtle curves in the wood and stone that spoke of decades of attentive living, each motion an acknowledgement of the life and generosity that had preceded him, a meditation on the enduring impact of human kindness. The journals and letters lay neatly on the table, each one a tangible echo of patience, hope, and quiet generosity, and Jack ran his fingers over the textured pages, reading carefully, savoring the deliberate words and the unspoken lessons woven between the lines, understanding that this was more than inheritance of space. It was inheritance of intention and care, a responsibility to honor the thread connecting past, present, and future. Blaze padded to the window, nose lifting to catch the subtle scents drifting in from the hillside, tail sweeping slowly across the floor, and Jack joined him, gazing outward at the golden light, the trees, and the distant rooftops, feeling the calm continuity of life flowing through the cottage, the land, and the acts of generosity that had quietly shaped it. He exhaled slowly, letting the serenity and quiet power of kindness fill him completely, aware that every careful motion, every moment of attentiveness, and every act of thoughtful observation had contributed to this unfolding grace, and that the presence of Blaze, alert, loyal, and intuitive, completed the silent harmony of human and animal, space and intention, past and present. Jack looked once more around the cottage, absorbing the textures, the light, the lingering scents, and the intangible warmth of trust and care, understanding fully that the quiet miracles had already begun to ripple outward, creating a sanctuary of hope, reflection, and enduring connection, a testament to the way human generosity, attentiveness, and kindness return, often in ways subtle, profound, and unanticipated. And as Blaze nudged his hand gently, amber eyes locking with his, Jack smiled, feeling a sense of belonging and purpose, knowing that the space, the memories, and the gifts of Eleanor Hayes would continue to echo through time, carrying the quiet, enduring miracle forward with each thoughtful, compassionate act performed within its walls.